Fine. J-Paul, I think you owe us to say who you really are.
So I really am, this is something, can you hear okay? Okay, I really am J-Paul Neeley. The Gaia Corporation is actually a fictional or speculative project that I've been working on as a graduate student at the Royal College of Art, and I'm currently in a course called Design Interactions, where we take emerging technologies and then work to speculate on future political or economic or social implications of those technologies. So all of my background that you read about in the handout is true up to this point, and Gaia Corporation is all speculation. An attempt to kind of allow an audience and all of us to play in this thought experiment. So thank you for giving that a go, and it was great to have the questions come back in character in this future time. So that was good.
Okay, as the real J-Paul Neeley, could you comment on the two talks that you heard about the current situation on patents and copyrights? What's your real thought on it?
Yeah, there are a couple of thoughts that I have and maybe points that I was trying to make too with the presentation. And one is the idea of just the amount of contribution that some of our synthetic biology creations have at this point. So like the Venture Cynthia, when we think of that, he's applying for a patent in that moment, but I tend to think of that as kind of 1% human ingenuity and 99% evolutionary technology that's been developed over time. So I still question some of our constructs that we're applying to the patenting of these systems. And then the other idea I just want to mention, we talked a little bit about the current state of the breast cancer patents with and the ACLU suing them. And I think I honestly am beginning to think that that's the wrong way to go, that these sort of genes and genomes shouldn't be open source and free to all. There should be an owner. There needs to be certain protections around them, but it's the wrong owner. So in a way, the ACLU, I think, is attacking it backwards. We should be looking at kind of what other implications there are to ownership, and maybe that does mean implications around the impact of those genes in society that then an owner like Amir Partners would be responsible for. So those were the sort of speculations I wanted people to get me thinking about.
Berthold, do you have any comment on the last remark?
No, I mean, anyway, I have to put the disclaimer that everything I say is my personal opinion. It's not to be interpreted as being the official position of the European Patent Office. I think that there is something which we have also I've discussed with some people in the synthetic biology community quite extensively, is that wish to establish a kind of innovation environment where there is free exchange and a lot of open and collaborative innovation going on, and that some scientists in the community feel that they are running into trouble because of existing patent rights. And I have some understanding for this, because we have precedents in some technologies like the ICT field, where, for example, in mobile phones you have a lot of patents, and you have to negotiate them all. And if in synthetic biology at some point we run in a situation where you have to negotiate hundreds of rights to make a single organism, then that could become difficult. But I would also agree with Jean-Paul Neeley that establishing open source is probably not easy and maybe not the right thing to do, because in software you have the possibility to use copyright to enforce open source, and you don't have that in biology. So it's not, even if you wanted to create open source, it's not so easy, because you can only create open source if you have rights that you can license. And that's also, I think, the problem that Gaia Corporation might run in, that if no government gives you these rights, then you have nothing to license. And And in the patent area, the problem is that patents are quite expensive. So once you have taken out a patent, you will probably not license them for free. But I think it's an open question, and this balance, to strike this balance between open and proprietary, and to strike this balance how to get the best innovation environment is not always easy. And I think there is room for inventions in this area, how to design the best licensing strategy also for public research organization to enable really broad dissemination, but at the same time invite investment of companies who have, of course, to make some profit.
Yeah, Philippe?
It's on?
No.
It's on. No, I just want to make a small comment on the myriad genetic and the breast cancer genes. I think it's not a matter of having wrong patents or that patenting should be not allowed or something like that. I think it's more a problem of the business strategy of myriad genetics, that they wanted to do all the tests in the US. So it's not like they had a more open licensing policy or something and making things more accessible, and we wouldn't have had all these patent problems, because I don't think that that's the problem. It's more a business strategy problem.
Sven?
Yeah, I have two questions for Philippe Jacobs and Berthold Rutz. You showed on one of your slides that you can patent the gene sequence or protein when you know the function. So this is of course a very philosophical question, because target validation is something which takes 10, 20 years sometimes, and even very well-known proteins. Every day we know about new functions, and so in principle we don't know it. So from a pragmatic point of view, when do you know the function of a protein and the gene sequence?
That's a problem, but we will file patent applications in Uganda if we have some belief that your too early finding, but you have some indication, you think, well, it binds on this receptor and this might give this signal, and perhaps we can cure this, and you don't know. But if there is some belief, we will file it and see from there. If you cannot sustain this thought, then it has no value. We will drop the patent application. But we have to file it, because if we wait until you find it all out, you are too late. So I can't answer exactly what the timing is when you have to file, but it's mostly very early. And when the researchers themselves think it might be true.
Over the last years, if I interfere, over the last 20 years, there has been a strong evolution towards having more and more examples to support your claims. 20 years ago, you could have a patent on almost no data and imagine a whole world around it, and almost everything goes through here.
No,
Today, there is an endless fight with patent examiners if a model or a finding is relevant, and that's obviously his comment, is in any way relevant to the disease where you are claiming that your drug might be helping. And this is why I'm wondering in the patent office, how much education and interaction is there? Because as an individual, it must be extremely difficult. I could not imagine myself as a patent examiner, as a rheumatologist, to even judge if something that comes on is going to be relevant for osteoarthritis, or there is not even any model that it stands for that in the animal model to some extent. So how do you deal with that?
Two small remarks here. It's true, if we, from a very practical point of view, if we think we would have something with a therapeutic value, then at least we need some in vivo validation, at least for US, with regard to US patent law. And if you are faced with a patent examiner, and I'm talking more about the US, it's not to protect you, and we are faced with somebody who is arguing or thinks that, well, it's true or it's not true that it may evolve to a real medicament, then we will bring the researcher and try to convince the examiner. And we will put lots of efforts in trying to talk with the examiners and convince them. So there is some cross-talking possible, and I think it's the same for the EPO.
I of course take this as a compliment that we don't make life for applicants always easy. But to come to the first question maybe first, how do we judge the function? that's of course not easy, and it depends on the state of the art a lot. So that's also why it has evolved over the years, and that's why probably your life is not as easy anymore, because inventive step, at least, I mean, novelty is rather simple. I mean, we look if the gene is already in the databases, and then we know if it's new or not. But then, then comes inventive step, and there we look also at the function. Of course, first there should be a function described, but then this function and the way you have found the gene, the way you've identified and associated the function should also be non-obvious. So simply a simple homology search, for example, is nowadays in most cases not enough anymore. That you say, okay, I found this new protein kinase and it resembles protein kinase X, and that's why it's a protein kinase. Then we would say, yeah, so just another protein kinase. That is somehow not surprising. Do you have any specific, plausible, credible new function which was not expected from the state of the art? So that's often where we drill down, and we want to have a function which is first specific to this gene or protein, and then we want to have something that is kind of non-obvious and unexpected. But that can be different things. It doesn't always have to be the biological function. It can also be the use for diagnostic purpose, or nowadays with synthetic molecules, it can even be the use for completely synthetic purpose, like zip coding and microarray. So these things are possible. The other thing is that, of course, you might all know that proteins don't have to, genes don't have to have only one function, but they can have many functions. And the only thing I can say here is we don't require all functions to be disclosed. One is enough. But then if somebody else later comes and finds another function, then he can file for a use claim of this protein. So if I have identified a receptor and I find this receptor is important for binding molecule X, and I file a patent application and get a patent on this, and later someone comes and finds that the same receptor is important for HIV entry into the cell, he can file a medical use claim on this receptor where he, for example, devises a strategy that he block HIV entry. And that would mean that then these two have to talk to each other to cross-license, because one cannot move with the other into the HIV field. But that's often happening that you have patents going narrower and narrower, and that you have some cross-talks between the patent holders. And apparently, I'm talking to industry, that works reasonably well in most cases. And to your question with the examiner capabilities,
it's extremely challenging sometimes.
It is, of course, but I mean, we have the opportunity, we have the chance that we are a lot of people. So we have only in biotech we have 250 people, and so we can specialize a lot, and we do we try to do a lot of exchange, going to companies, going to conferences. We of course meet also with the applicants in oral proceedings, and we exchange letters, and so we try to be always at the forefront. And you also have to say that the patent application is not a scientific publication, so we don't do peer review, we don't repeat the experiments in the office. We cannot, we have no labs. So it's a different level of requirement. I think there are two aspects. One aspect is what do we require to grant a patent. And for this, patent law applies, and we have to look into the patent application. If you, as patent applicant, you describe a method to isolate this product in a way that everybody skilled in the art can repeat this. So this can either be you have sequenced the DNA, you give the structure, this GCAT, blah, blah, and so everybody can synthesize this piece of gene. Or you have described an isolation method for a protein, number of chromatographic steps, so that everybody can have a single band on the gel and know what the protein is. That's one thing. That's what we require for the patentability. It's not enough that you say, I have this plant here, I think it has a gene in, and I want to patent this gene which is good for flowering. This is not enough. We need an isolation, which means in most cases a structural description or a way how to isolate this protein or gene. Then the next question, and I think you're probably referring to this, is how do I enforce such a patent? And that is then the question, when I have a patent on a gene or on a protein, can I, for example, enforce this on a living being? And you cannot if the gene or the protein exists in the natural context. So that, for example, if I have a patent on a flowering gene in a plant, I cannot enforce this patent on all plants who have this flowering genes from nature. This is not part of the power of the patent. You can only enforce your patent if somebody put this gene into a plant in a transgenic way. Yeah, and the same for human beings and so on. So in the natural context, you cannot enforce a patent on a protein or a gene and so on. It's only if it has gone through a step of isolation and putting back in a way.
Only in the plant, but not the 100 years after that.
I mean, that comes a bit to the...
Now, the biological product is isolated in the plant during the life of the plant. But that biological product is not isolated after that time, the 100 years after that.
After 100 years, the patent is
in the environment.
I guess you can have the discussion later during the reception. I have here a question from Huib, and that will be the last one for today because we're running time.
Given our state of knowledge of systems biology and ecological systems, I think we can never say we can exclude risks. Given the fact that we cannot exclude risks, can we argue then that the patent holder is responsible and liable, you mentioned the example, for any damage as being caused by the patent being applied? And if so, well, maybe apart from this issue, would insurance companies be willing to sell insurance policies to those who hold the patents that include this certain risk and potential damage?
Who feels up for the challenge? First the insurance, or first the patents and then the insurance?
Well, seen from an insurance point of view, I try to make clear that insurance grew out of risk observation. So the risk observation came before you could talk about insurance. I guess nowadays the broad outline is still the same, that you need to have data, or you need at least to have a credible scenario about what those data may look like in order to find insurance companies willing to engage in the coverage of any new technology. And we see today, I guess there's a big debate in the insurance industry about the coverage for nanotechnologies, where it is difficult to measure the risk exposure. Insurance has grown out of a pattern of trial and error. We used to think that using asbestos was a very clever way to reduce the fire risk. We have discovered afterwards that asbestos may induce a number of other risks. And in that case, you have insurance that would probably be on the side of reducing the use of a certain number of technologies, like those ones including asbestos. On the other hand, there is an edge in the insurance industry of trying to move the insurance industry forward. We had insurance companies that had to write coverage for steam boilers when steam energy became available, and we had people who started to write coverage for satellites when there was no statistical evidence. But you would use a number of data, including the data that can be provided by sheer research, in order to have at least an in vitro assessment of what the risks may be, and in that way try to have the insurance company interested in covering and pioneering the covering of new risks.
Okay, I think it's No, sorry. I think it's time that we go for a drink. We deserve one.
Can I ask one question?
Sorry.
Just a short remark on patent law. I'm not aware of any patent law in the world which would include risk on the part of the patent holder, and we as a patent office have no way to check if a technology you apply for example, you apply for a new bridge structure, we can simply not check if this bridge will hold. I mean, we check novelty and inventive steps. And the patent holder, there are other regulations for this. There's truck regulation, there's building construction regulations. But I think one should not overfreight the patent system with all kind of things. I think it's overdoing it and probably not good for neither the system nor society.